these are the policy organs. So if you look at the Constitutive Act, it tells you what the policy organ is. Primarily, like from the word policy, they are the policy making body or the decision making body. The highest decision making body of the African Union is the Assembly. So we say it is the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments. Is the Assembly, and that's the highest level of decision making. They meet, well, before now. Okay, I'll tell you about the reforms that are going on in the African Union right now, and that reform is led by Paul Kagame of Rwanda. So before now, the heads of state twice every year, uh, January, February, usually January, if not early February, and then in the middle of the year. But I think they found out that it was kind of it was expensive, definitely. Having such meetings, is usually expensive because it usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks. So they decided, okay, instead of the assembly meeting twice a year, let it be once a year, usually in Ethiopia, South Africa. And then in the middle of the year, let the African Union meet with the REX. Because the perception is that the REX are very important and foundational to the full integration of the African Union. Many African countries are more committed, they are committed more to their REC than to the African Union. So the countries in West Africa, they have more commitment to ECOWAS, they pay their dues on time, they respond to issues on time. The countries in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and the rest, they are more committed to EAC than to the AU. So the African Union felt, all right, let's find a way to ensure that the AU is talking to the REX and listening to them and integrating the issues that they bring up. Below the African Union, well, not really below. So apart from the African Union, there's the Pan-African Parliament, which is supposed to be direct. Well, okay, I think I should explain this. The African Parliament, the Pan-African Parliament, works differently from the European Parliament, and maybe I should even step back a bit. The AU is modeled after the EU, So you have the African Union, you have the European Union. But what makes it a bit complex or more difficult is that we are borrowing some things from the European Union and we are borrowing some things from the UN, the United Nations. From the European Union is a supranational organization, and that's an organization where the member states have given some of their privileges, some of their sovereignty, some of their powers to the organization to make decisions on their behalf. So the European Union makes decisions, some decisions, not every decision, on behalf of their member states. It's a supranational organization. But the African Union, we didn't want that. In the European system, there is the European Union, and the Secretariat is called the European Commission. But there's also the European Parliament. For the European Parliament, the members are elected directly from the citizens of Europe. That is different from the Pan-African Parliament. For the Pan-African Parliament, the members are elected from the parliaments of the member states of the African Union. So you see that that's slightly different. And of course, the Parliament, the African Union, Pan-African Parliament, has been having problems of late. It's located in South Africa. The head office is in a place called Midrand, for those who know South Africa very well. So you have the Parliament, and then you have the Executive Council. The Executive Council is made up of all the ministers of foreign affairs. Those are the people that make up the Executive Council. And what is their role? They meet, they look at issues, and they prepare decisions for the heads of state to take the final decision. The PRC, the Permanent Representatives Council, is made up of all the ambassadors in Ethiopia. So those are the people who are on ground, all the ambassadors, and those ones, they meet regularly to discuss. And it's just like the security, well, it's not exactly the Security Council, because we have a Peace and Security Council in Africa also. But the PRC members, they meet regularly, and of course, they give feedback to their home countries. So we also have what they call the Specialized Technical Committees, which oversee specific thematic areas in the African Union. So there's one overseeing communication, There's one overseeing education is combined with science and technology and innovation. There's one that oversees, I mean, different thematic areas are brought together. The Peace and Security Council is similar to the Security Council of the UN. And of course, as you expect, they oversee issues that have to do with peace and security. So there's the ECOSOC, which, trying to bring all other groups, the NGOs, the media, every other group, you're trying to bring them to also contribute to the governance of the AU. And then that's ECOSOC. And that's also similar to a similar organization in the UN. Now, there's the concept of NEPAD. NEPAD, when the AU was being formed in 2000, 2002, parallel to the AU was NEPAD. And the issue was that the Obasanjo, they felt that we needed, the OAU was trying to do too many things, uh, maintain peace and security, do developmental projects, and so many things, that it was not going to be, it was not good. They couldn't succeed. So they decided to create NEPAD. NEPAD means, if I remember correctly, New Partnership for Africa's Development. So it was to do two things. It was to be the development, the project arm of the African Union, and then also to, with the international partners. If they have any funding, they pass it through NEPAD, and then NEPAD will implement it. So that was how NEPAD started, New Partnership for Africa Development. And if you remember very well, one of the things Obasanjo did was to campaign for debt cancellation for African countries. He succeeded in doing it for Nigeria. I don't know whether he succeeded for other countries, but I know he succeeded for Nigeria. Even though we are back in debt again now, unfortunately, but he succeeded in doing that debt cancellation for Nigeria. The current head of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, was the Nigerian Minister of Finance at that time. So she did a lot of work in ensuring that Nigeria was out of debt. With the Kagame reforms of the AU, they also felt Nepal was not doing very well. And then there was a proliferation of organizations, smaller organizations within the AU. So they felt, let's find a way to integrate Nepal into the African Union. So Nepal is now integrated into the African Union and is now called AUDA, African Union Development Agency. But when, so that there will be a linkage with Nepal and so that people don't forget where it started from, they use AUDA Nepal. People know that it's an evolution from Nepal to AUDA. So it's AUDA, African Union Development Agency, and it's based in South Africa. Still around this issue of African Union Nepal, they also came up with this APRM, African Union Peer Review Mechanism, and which is a laudable idea. And the idea really is that let's learn from each other, from one another, from ourselves. What are the things you're doing right, and let me learn from you. And then they tried to develop some KPIs, some how do you call it, key performance indicators to see how African countries are performing in different areas. So the APRM has been there, is functional, and it's, of course, it's also optional, but it's been very useful. It's been very useful. They have the legal organs, several legal organs on different things, on human rights, on the different aspects. The financial institutions are not yet operational, but they've been proposed. So there's a proposal for an African Central Bank, there's a proposal for an African Investment Bank, and there's a proposal for what's the third one? There are three of them. I can't remember the name now. I think I'll remember as we go along. But those ones are not yet functioning. Hopefully, and I know they are making very strong efforts to do that. Because one of the issues about the financial institutions is that they are trying to promote a single currency for Africa. I think it's called Afro. But by the time you see what's happening in Europe with the euro, especially when they had some crisis, and then when you see that, so it's a bit discouraging. And even within Africa too, I know within ECOWAS they try to start off a single currency which they called ECO, but there was a problem with the French-speaking African countries because of CEFA and the rest. I mean, it's really a complex matter. So the financial institutions have not taken off, but well, they are working on that. And then I talked about the regional economic communities earlier on. So these are the policy organs of the African Union. So let's talk about the Secretariat of the African Union. That is the Secretariat, the picture you have on the left. That's the picture that was donated by China. To your right of that picture, that high-rise building is where you have the offices. To your left are the halls and the conference centers and the rest. The dome you see in the middle is where the what do you call it, the African Assembly takes place, and that dome, that hall has been renamed. It's now called the Nelson Mandela Hall in honor of Nelson Mandela. So, like I said earlier, AUC is headquarters in Addis Ababa. It has a chairperson. Currently, the chairperson is his name is Musa Faki, Mahama Musa Faki. He's from Chad Republic. And then he has a deputy chair, a lady from Rwanda. She has a long name. I can't remember how. I can't remember the name very well, but she's from Rwanda. Um, and then they have these so they have commissioners. The commissioners are elected, and they represent the member states, so particularly the regions. And the good thing about this, one of the things they do is to ensure gender balance. So from each political sub-region, they have two commissioners. So one must be a male, one must be a female. So there's really gender balance in the African Union. And even from the chair, the chairperson is a male right now, Faki from Chad. The deputy chair is a lady from Rwanda. So they ensure that. So you have listed there the departments of the African Union, which currently is 6. It used to be 8 before, but with the Kagame reforms that came up, there has been a lot of restructuring. So they've restructured, they've merged some departments. For example, in the past, political affairs was a different department from peace and security. But there was this thinking that why wait until there's crisis when you know that the source of African crisis is with elections, it's with the political system. So why don't we deal with the political issues before they become crisis? So that's why that thinking was what brought about the integration of political affairs, peace, and security. Another department that was merged is economic development. It was different from trade and industry. There are two different departments, but now they are merged together. Infrastructure and energy has always been there, and they still maintain that. And then health, humanitarian affairs, and social development. It was formerly called Department of Social. Was it social development? It was social something, but now you see they've expanded it to because of the health issues, humanitarian issues in Africa, and not knowing that COVID was going to come up later. What used to be HRST, that's Department of Human Resources, Science and Technology, is now ESTI, Education, Science, Technology and Innovation. What used to be DREA, Department of Rural Economy and Agriculture, because of the current talk about blue economy and harnessing the ocean, talked about sustainability. So they've restructured it and renamed it as agriculture, rural development, blue economy, and sustainable development. So those are the departments. Each of the departments is headed by the commissioner, which is a political appointment. But there are also directors but the directors are staff of the commission. There are many directorates, maybe for youth, for gender, for different directorates. There are different units, protocol units, ICT units, different offices, different services like security. So it's really a huge organization. So let's talk about the AU structures a bit more also. So in the AU structure, that's the African Union, every institution can either be an organ of the AU or a specialized, agency, or, a specialized, um, agency, or, a specialized, um, agency, or, a specialized, 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 agen uh, a specialized technical office. Now, for the organs are established by a decision of the assembly. The organs are established by a decision of the assembly or through the adoption of a treaty. That's how you form an organ. So the assembly itself is an organ of the AU. The executive council is an organ of the AU, but those one special organs and they are called policy organs of the AU. But there are other organs too. One of the organs which concerns us is the African Space Agency. The African Space Agency is an organ of the AU. If you look at the statute, it's an organ of the AU. The instrument that established the organ, which is the statute, they have to pass through the policy organs, that's PLC, Executive Council, and once they are adopted, then that organization or that organ is established. The one of the characteristics of the organ is that the budget of the organ has to be approved by the policy organs of the AU and is subject to the administrative and financial rules and regulations of the union. So all the organs report to the assembly through the executive council, and of course they get to the executive council through the commission. The specialized technical office are smaller offices under a department of the AU. So the idea is that, for example, ESTI, Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation, is big, but they have an office called STLC in Nigeria, Scientific, Technical, and Research Council, and that's based in Nigeria. The idea is actually to promote science and research. So that is specialized, but it's supervised by a department, right? So for such ones, the budget is usually submitted through the department to the assembly. But their major characteristic is that they are supervised by a department of the AU. So they don't need their own statutes. They don't need to. They don't need constituency. They don't need statutes to stand alone. Once the PLC, what do you call it? The Permanent Representative Council agrees that, oh, we need to set up this structure, semi-autonomous, then usually the assembly will rubber stamp it and then I need to fly. The specialized agency is slightly different. Now, let me see what I can use as an example of a specialized agency. These guys in aviation, how is it called now? African, I can't remember the name, but the people in aviation will know the. No, there's another one apart from ASECNA. There's another. Is it AFRAC or AFRAC, something like that? AFCAC, something. Yeah, yes.
AFCAC and AFRAC. AFCAC is the commission, and the AFRA is for the airlines.
Good. So so those two organizations, especially the commission, they are specialized agencies of the African Union. So they are independent, so to say. They are independent. Their policies, their decision making, it's not through the African Union. They make their own policies. They set up their own structures and make their own policies. They make their own regulations. They make their own budgets, right? So member states can just maybe send them representatives to plenipotentiary to the organization.